1955 to 1975, the Vietnam War, a long bloody conflict between the communist North and the capitalist South Vietnams, backed by the United States. Political differences had separated the nations and claimed over 1 million lives. In 1973, the United States signed the Paris Peace Accord, officially ending its involvement in the war. On April 30th, 1975, the South Vietnamese capital of Saigon fell to North Vietnamese forces. Throughout the course of the war, all the way until the 1990s, an estimate of over 1.5 million people fled the country, which began their long journey towards a new country. Following the end of the Vietnam War, there was a mass exodus of South Vietnamese people from all age, gender, or class. The flow of refugees would continue all the way until the late 1990s.
There was a mass flow of Indo-Chinese people fleeing their countries during the last 30 years of the 20th century. Many fled because of persecution from their country's communist regime in fear of being sent to re-education camps or being killed off because they simply didn't follow the new regime.
In response to the mass flow of refugees fleeing Vietnam, the United States commenced Operation Frequent Winds, New Life, and New Arrivals. Operation Frequent Wind would be known to be the largest helicopter evacuation in human history. Over 7,000 Vietnamese and Americans were evacuated to nearby aircraft carriers and naval vessels.
Operation time for Frequent Wind was such a small window. We had 2 days to evacuate as many Vietnamese and American people. It came to the point where we had to push helicopters and aircrafts off the carrier just to fit more people. Pilots were told to ditch their helos in the water and await rescue.
Those not evacuated by the helicopters had to begin a long trek across the ocean towards neighboring countries. These Vietnamese boat people would be attacked by pirates and ravaged by storms as they crossed the oceans in sometimes small riverboats. An estimate of 50,000 to 200,000 refugees would die traversing the waters.
Đi đến đó là khó lắm, mà phải đi qua nước với đồ, đi nó có nhiều người chết lắm. Mà nếu mình ở lại cái chỗ của mình sẽ chết, mình có thể chết hơn nhiều. Nó vòi nó bắn mình với đồ. Nếu mình đi đến cái chỗ mấy cái phải đợi mấy năm, mấy ngày mới đến được Mỹ hay mấy cái chỗ mới được.
Many Vietnamese refugees were stationed in refugee camps, and many others fled to nearby countries such as Malaysia and the British territory of Hong Kong. The largest of these refugee camps were Galang Refugee Camp and Palau Bidong. Many of these refugee camps would become overcrowded as the refugees desperately awaited relocation.
Pulau Bidong had a capacity of only 4,500 inhabitants, but over 40,000 refugees would be stationed here at one time, crowded together in an area of only 2.6 square kilometers in size. To put that in retrospect, an average classroom is equivalent to 56 square meters. That means that if a regular classroom was a refugee camp, then 80 people would be stationed in it at one time.
But these camps were only the beginning of the journey. Over the next 2.5 decades, over 1 million refugees would be relocated to the United States, Britain, Australia, Canada, and France. These countries willingly let these immigrants in to save them from persecution.
During the last 3 decades of the 20th century, Western countries did their best to allow refugees in. The United States alone let in 800,000 refugees. Many settled in California and Texas, along with other states along the country. Many migrated to the large metropolitan areas such as Los Angeles and San Francisco.
Cứ như nghe mấy cái đồ cho mấy cái Mỹ rồi mới chưa biết đến đó. Mà nếu mình đến đó mình thấy nhiều đồ mà không biết lắm, không biết cái nào nói tiếng sao mình nghe cái là American Dream, mình không chưa biết, mình nghe cái đó thôi, mình chưa biết là cái gì. Mà đến đó không biết cái nào lái xe với đồ mà là khó lắm cho mình mấy ngày trước. Mà mình sau mấy ngày sau thì dễ hơn một chút cho mình.
Despite not being able to speak English, many Vietnamese Americans quickly adapted, and by the 1990s, 3/4 of the Vietnamese American population could speak English well.
The adaptation of the Vietnamese people to American culture is quite amazing. In just over 10 years, 75% of the population was fluent in English. For such a large group of migrants to learn so quickly, it really is a phenomenon.
The Vietnamese people were able to both assimilate and retain their culture. While some completely assimilated to American culture, the vast majority decided to retain their ethnic culture. Many Vietnamese people in the metropolitan areas prefer to stick together, while those in the suburban areas tend to be more dispersed. But even though the Vietnamese refugees had made it safely to their new countries, many still face a grave problem for those growing up in this alien country.
program is brought to you by Fresh Industries Melting Pot 5000, only $29.99. That's 1-800-356-3636. I repeat, 1-800-356-3636. Order now and get your Melting Pot 5000.
Racism and discrimination. Many Vietnamese refugees had to face these hardships in their new country. The Vietnamese people soon understood how tough it could be to grow up in a visible minority in the 1990s.
Mình đến đây có nhiều người nhìn giống như mình mắt bự lắm, không biết mình là ai. Nhìn mấy người mà Việt Nam, nhìn mấy người Mỹ không biết gì hết. Nó nghĩ mình nó nhìn nhiều người ai. Nó đâu có nhìn mình giống như mình là không có gì hết. Thì là khó lắm cho mấy người nhỏ không biết cái đầu nó như vậy lắm. Mình đi qua nước, mình đến đây mình bị bán với đồ mấy người trắng mà không biết gì hết thôi.
Despite all the challenges the Vietnamese people faced, they continued to move on, setting up many small communities such as Little Saigon.
I think it was the fact that the Vietnamese American population had nowhere else to go. They were sent away by their country and they had nothing left to lose. I think that's the reason why they continued to move on and through these hardships so that they could live together in this American culture.
The Vietnam War has been over for 40 years now, and the region is now stable, both economically and politically. Since the closing of the refugee camps in the 1990s, the tide of refugees had been severely reduced, and the number of political prisoners has diminished. The country has employed many human rights laws to protect its people, and Vietnam is now moving towards the 21st century, making free trade deals with the EU and even the United States. Polls show that 76% of the Vietnamese people in Vietnam are in favor of the US. The problems that ravaged Vietnam have now, for the most part, subsided. That concludes this session of Refugees Around the World. We hope you enjoyed, and from the team here at Melting Pot Studios, we thank you for watching. Join us next time as we look into the Syrian refugees desperately escaping the Middle East.